Hello. So currently the only life that we know is that exists on Earth. But there are many instances that could occur that could completely wipe out all life and make it so Earth is no longer habitable. The first is the expansion of the sun. So with time, the sun expands because there is an increase of fusion of hydrogen in the core of the sun. And so as it fuses together, it makes heavier elements, and then when it makes heavier elements, it expels more energy, and that just causes the sun to expand. And so the distance from the star is a crucial component, we think, about where life could exist, because a planet can't be either too hot or too cold, we believe, for life to exist. And so when the sun expands, it pushes out the habitable zone, so the places that things can live, because it's getting bigger, so I can show you. So basically, these are the props we have. So say this is the sun, and this is a planet. Obviously it's, this amount from the sun. And then if we switch it for a bigger sun, the space decreased a little bit. And so that's, very important when it comes to how hot the planet gets. And yeah, so it also has more energy when it's expanding, as we mentioned, because the fusion. And so it's hotter too. And so planets like Earth that could once sustain life are now way too hot, and then life just can't exist there. The sun's also going to expand way too much and eventually explode, and so it's going to completely engulf Earth when it expands. And so life is just gonna kind of end entirely, because if you don't have a planet, you can't really have life. So that's a little bit of a problem. Another thing that can make it so Earth is no longer habitable is the runaway greenhouse effect, or also the moist greenhouse effect, which pretty much has to do with the amount of greenhouse gases that are in the air. So greenhouse gases trap heat like a greenhouse does. And so if we increase, or the amount of greenhouse gases increases too much, it makes it so the planet becomes unbearably warm. Basically traps all the heat in it, and it just becomes way too hot. And so because it traps the heat, and the heat can't escape into the atmosphere like it typically does, it is gonna make the oceans all dry up, so it's gonna make them evaporate. And then if there's no liquid medium for things to live in, because that's really important to metabolism and everything, everything's would eventually die. And so we kind of think that this is what happened with Venus, the runaway greenhouse effect, because we think that there was oceans on Venus, but now there's not. But yeah, if there's no water or any kind of liquid, because it's all evaporated, life is just going to eventually die. And so finally, Earth has a magnetic field that kind of protects it from a lot of things. And so if we were to lose that, which could happen if the interior of the Earth cools too much, which has happened to other planets. We think the moon could have once had it, but it was so small that the interior cooled. So if for some reason the interior of the Earth cools way too much, it could stop generating a magnetic field. And then we would lose protection from solar wind particles from the sun. And that's not good at all. That basically can just cause a lot of issues with life. And so it would eventually strip away the atmosphere. And then without the atmosphere, it also would be way too cold at night and way too hot during the day, because of where the sun is, while the Earth is rotating. And so that's not great, because it's just the conditions would be so extreme to begin with, but also they would just drastically be changing in such short periods of time. And so that would make it so life just can't really exist either. And so I'm not really sure if we as humans can do anything to make it so Earth doesn't lose its habitability. We're kind of just prolonging the inevitable as it is, because, eventually the sun's just gonna kind of eat the Earth. But I guess maybe in the future, in some kind of sci-fi super technology thing, we could tie a rope around the Earth and tow it somewhere, tow it a little bit farther so we stay in the habitable zone of the Earth, of the sun while it expands. But that's kind of crazy to think about, because towing a whole planet. But I don't know. It would just kind of be prolonging the inevitable of the sun eventually expanding way too much and exploding. But I guess we could tow it to maybe another galaxy. Who knows? With the runaway greenhouse effect, considering we keep on putting greenhouse gases into the air despite knowing that it's going to have an issue, if it were to kind of become an issue, I don't entirely trust that we could do something to fix that. So that kind of seems like a wash, but I don't know, maybe if the entire planet's gonna die, more so than we think it already is, we'll do something. And there's also geoengineering, so maybe if it gets that bad, we could do something about that. Don't know how much that would work, because it kind of would probably be too much of the process anyway, but who knows. And then with the magnetic field, maybe we could find a way to make sure our core doesn't cool down. So we could just kind of like constantly be injecting heat into the core. Make it so convection continues to occur, stuff like that. But I don't know, who knows? But yeah, life on Earth can die in a lot of different ways. And we'll see what happens.